DHS Barbie Kristi Noem, Secretary Kristi Noem, might be leaving her role at the start of the year as Secretary of DHS. As I told you the other day, that's according to many sources have been talking to The Absolute Truth. But she wouldn't necessarily be gone from D.C. because she's, considering more. The question is, who exactly might be replacing her? Remember I teased that the other day? Well, I told you, I promised that I would tell you, and it's none other than outgoing Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin, according to our sources, who would be stepping in to fill that role as he continues to pad his resume for greater hopes of perhaps the presidency one day even, or, maybe some other political office. Now, what would that be like? Some would applaud that. However, what I have to tell you, considering I live in Virginia, in which he's governor now, he is himself an open borders, pro-immigration, pro-free trade, globalist Republican. So when it comes to DHS, we're leaping, I think Kristi Noem has been good in a lot of ways, but we would be going head first into legal immigration. And the question is this really MAGA? Well, surely President Trump remains steadfast in his commitment to and prioritizing the American worker, right? Or maybe not. Watch.
There's never going to be a country like what we have right now.
And does that
the
mean
Republicans have to talk about it, Laura.
And does that mean the H-1B visa thing will not be a big priority for your administration? Because if you want to raise wages for American workers, you can't flood the country with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of foreign workers.
You also do have to bring in talent.
We have plenty of talented people here.
No, you don't.
We don't have talented people here?
No, you don't have certain talents, and people have to learn. You can't take people off an unemployment line and say, I'm going to put you into a factory where we're going to make missiles, or I'm going to put
How did we ever do it before?
Well,
I'll
give you an example. In Georgia, they raided because they wanted illegal immigrants out. They had people from South Korea that made batteries all their lives. Making batteries are very complicated. It's not an easy thing and very dangerous. A lot of explosions, a lot of problems. They had like 500 or 600 people, early stages, to make batteries and to teach people how to do it. Well, they wanted them to get out of the country. You're going to need that, Laura. I mean, I know you and I disagree on this. You can't just say a country's coming in, going to invest $10 billion to build a plant, and going to take people off an unemployment line who haven't worked in 5 years, and they're going to start making missiles. It doesn't work that way.
Joining us now to discuss this further is the founder of U.S. Tech Workers, Mr. Kevin Lynn. Kevin, it's good to see you. I mean, I couldn't believe when he said that. I mean, there were several things in that interview altogether. But look, I don't know if you heard the last segment. We might all eventually be placed sooner than we thought with artificial intelligence. But in the meantime, it sounds like they're going to push forward with replacing a lot of Americans with H-1B visas. And we just got the news. The news just broke today that Verizon is going to replace 15,000 people with AI. I mean, at what point do we prioritize the American worker? Because, I mean, President Trump said we don't have the talent, but I don't believe that's the case. Do you, Kevin?
No, I certainly don't, Amber. Let me just say, real pleasure to be back on the show with you. The thing is this, they have been replacing Americans with the H-1B visa since it came into being with the Immigration Act of 1990. So this isn't an AI phenomena. In fact, we tried to use AI to actually build a program earlier this year, and it just failed. And only to find now, roughly most of the Fortune 500 companies are realizing that their attempts to use AI to make them more efficient, more productive, are actually leading to productivity gaps, where it's one company estimated it was costing about $50 per person in lost productivity. So, Emerald, it's not AI. What it is our corporations are addicted to cheap labor. And with the H-1B visa, they've had that opportunity since 1990, and it's legal to replace Americans. And to kind of put it all in context, the biggest issue that the president ran on in 2016 was immigration, both legal and illegal. At that time, he called the H-1B visa a pipeline for cheap labor. During his 2016 campaign, he had Disney workers who had been forced to train their H-1B visa replacements when Disney outsourced all their IT operations to HCL, a H-1B visa dependent consulting firm. And he stood for American workers. And on August 3rd, 2020, I was with him in the cabinet room with several TVA workers who had already started the process, that's Tennessee Valley Authority, who had already begun the process of training their H-1B visa replacements. And he fired the chairman, one of the board of directors. In fact, he signed an EO that would put a firewall around the federal government to root out all the H-1B visa dependent companies that the government had contracted with. And now we see this shift in rhetoric, like as you showed the interview with Laura Ingraham, Emerald. It's such a difference in the rhetoric, and I have to believe it's outside influences that weren't there earlier. It's the tech bros. Many of them have residences now in DC, and I believe it's, President Trump is now having to balance what they want in terms of employment visas like H-1B, STEM OPT against what many people throughout his agencies, and we know he has really good people working for him. One, I don't think you get much better than Stephen Miller. And throughout DHS, DOJ, DOL, we have really very competent, highly motivated, dedicated America First personnel. But obviously, there's something going on here that I'm not privy to.
Yeah, so I got a lot of calls this week. I got a call from a someone inside the administration raising the red flag about Department of Homeland Security, and they say, like you said, it's actually staff. They need more staff, but there are some really great people who are on the inside, right? Who are very pro-American worker when it comes to immigration, and they want to do the right thing, but they feel like they're not being heard, that they're not able to do their job. And this was another person who was confirming to me that Glenn Youngkin would be is the front runner to replace Secretary Noem should she depart. And they were concerned about that, partly based on the governor having done a handshake that I think a lot of people have forgotten about back in 2020 with people like Georgia Governor Brian Kemp saying that, they're going to take the Republican Party. Trump's gone. We're going to take the Republican Party back to where it was, which is this pro-legal immigration, right? A lot of H-1B visas servicing the corporation. So they were very concerned about that. Should he be put back in place? I don't know if you can speak to that, but there is definitely something going on, because I do remember in the first term, I covered it from the on the ground in the White House. President Trump was very concerned about this issue, right? Stephen Miller was very concerned about this issue, and it seemed like they were making progress, albeit maybe not as fast as we wanted then, but there was a little more progress. So to see this about face and what the president has just had to say is even a bit shocking to me, Kevin.
Right. It should be shocking. You had asked earlier, about the qualified Americans. I'll give you one example, and this is the PISA results. It's the Program for International Student Assessment. Roughly 72, 74 countries participate every year in it, and it looks at competence in math, reading, and science. And Americans do very well in this. For instance, American Asians come out number 3, American whites number 10, on the whole, Americans rank 18 out of 72 countries. American blacks fare higher than any other uh, 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 African nation. American Hispanics fare better than any other Hispanic nation. We do very well. We have the talent, and understand these roles. When you look at the total labor force that is STEM, that would be considered like a STEM role, STEM job, it's only about 4 to 5% of the total workforce. And we produce an abundance of talent for that. Unfortunately, many people have been gaslit into thinking, oh, we need to import all this foreign talent. Well, number one, the H-1B visa is the last route to do that with, because it's done purely on a lottery. Everyone comes from one country. 74% come from one country, and that is India. Now, I had mentioned the PISA test. Well, India, 6 years ago, came out number 72 of 74 countries, and they didn't participate in the last round. They were so embarrassed by the results. And yet, this is the broad-based talent that we're bringing in to replace America's tech workers. And I think and I'd love to get your feedback on this, Emerald. I don't think our president does well with nuance, because during that interview with Ingram, he had talked about, wow, who's going to build these factories and everything? Well, the reality is, if you need to train Americans, it's a tiny workforce that's needed to do that. You don't need to be bringing 120,000 people in on H-1B a year. And we have like 300,000 people here on the L-1 visa and intercompany transfer. We have over 400,000 foreign workers who are here on what we call STEM OPT, optional practical training, which is getting a 3-year work permit if you're you graduate from a U.S. university, optional practical training, curricular practical training. It's crazy. We don't need these workers.
And they were going to address that in the first term too. Remember, because you and I talked about it back then. They were supposed to be addressing that whole issue that most people don't even know what that is because we don't talk about it enough. I don't know. I mean, I wish I had more answers for you, but I do. This reminded me of something you saw. You were talking about the Indian issue. You know how they dominate, especially the tech field, right? They bring them in, and someone I usually respect a lot, and I've talked to a lot over the years, is Dinesh D'Souza, and he did tweet, "The future belongs to the poop throwers," recently, in referencing the Indians coming in and taking U.S. tech jobs. So I hope he'll rethink that. Kevin, Lynn, it's good to catch up with you. We'll continue to highlight the issue and ask the questions of the administration, and we'll see what happens at DHS. I mean, like you said, there are some good people in there if they were just able to do their job. So we hope they'll get to do so in the near future. It's good to see you, Kevin.
Good to see you, Emerald. Have a great day.